process with the New Mexico State Land Office. If there are topics or discussions specifically on that bid lease process or the management of those state lands, we will record those messages. However, we will not be discussing those, as that is not the focus of this meeting. The Greater Albuquerque Housing Partnership is a close to 30-year-old nonprofit based here in Albuquerque. And we like to think that we're building a better Albuquerque. We're a community housing development organization, which means we're a specific type of nonprofit. We have 6 projects or developments that we've developed to date, and 1 more in construction. One of specific interest to this property is the Luminaria Senior Community, and we envision this Farolito to be a partner property of that. In the upper left-hand column is what the finished project looks like there at Farolito. The project we are discussing tonight will be at 10501 Central Northeast, which is in that vacant land right to the left of the gray building. The other properties, you can find their addresses on our website at abqgap.org, and we welcome you to go in and visit them. We take pride in an award-winning design and features for the residents and how that property contributes to the community at large. And so there's just some examples here of some of our other developments. Farolito Senior is going to be designed for those seniors aging in place. Many are on fixed incomes, and all of these will have an affordable component. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? So what we designed that with is a lot of community features, public gardens, fitness spaces, and leasing spaces specifically for that population, whether that's 55 and older, or potentially 62 and older. Next slide. This is just an example of one of our 1 bedrooms. These are specifically the units at Luminaria Senior. We're utilizing a lot of the same features and also taking some lessons learned from that project to always make each one a little bit better. All of the units will come with the appliances attached: a range, a hood, a microwave, a washer and dryer, and the full plumbing fixtures. Unfortunately, they do not come decorated as nice like this. This is staged as our model unit, just to give folks some idea of how they can envision that space. I will be available for questions throughout the evening, but at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie Fishman with Consensus Planning.
Thank you, Felipe, and welcome to everybody who's online. Again, I'm Jackie Fishman. I am the planner consultant on this project. Good to be here with you all tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the site and zoning issues and things like that for anyone who's interested in those kind of details. As Felipe said, our project site is on the north side of Central, just east of Eubank. It's across the street from Luminaria. It's about, as you can see on the slide, it's about a 2.3 acre site that's owned by the State Land Office currently. The zoning on the parcel is MXH, which is mixed use high intensity. I don't think the project that we're designing is going to get to the maximum allowable height or density or anything like that the zoning allows, but that is what the zoning is. It's mixed use high intensity. Central Avenue is a major transit corridor, which if some of you are familiar with that terminology, it's a designation from the city's comprehensive plan. And when you're on a major transit corridor, you have some different types of development standards that you can take advantage of or not. but it's obviously a very well located site, access to transit, and to a pretty core area of the city of Albuquerque. I don't know if we want to talk more about any of the zoning aspects of it, or just wait until we have some questions later. But if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. So if you're familiar with the property, it's obviously it's undeveloped. It's not in very good condition. I would deem this property blighted. It's not contributing in any way to the city or the community, and this project would activate the property, bring a good use that's needed into Albuquerque. If you're all familiar with the mayor's Housing Forward initiative to bring up to 5,000 more units to the city of Albuquerque within the next 3 years, this would go to that effort. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Hannah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah File Greenhood. I'm an architect and principal at Decker Parrott Sabatini. I've had the privilege to continue our relationship with Greater Albuquerque Housing Partnership and get to work with this great team on a sister site across Central for this project Farolito. So what I'd like to do tonight is just give a brief overview of the design and process. And where we stand in the design process is very early on. We are in the schematic design portion of our work. And so conceptual development to help meet the needs and mission of our client, Greater Albuquerque Housing Partnership, evaluate for everything preliminary code requirements, meet all of the zoning requirements that Jackie has listed, and then also really lean into developing a community for the residents. And so the senior population that we anticipate is going to be a dynamic and diverse community group. We mentioned 55 plus, perhaps 62 plus, and we all age differently. And so figuring out how to be as adaptable as possible and really serve the needs of the community at large. And so bringing in a lot of the design features to really continue to create a gateway on Central Avenue with luminaria across the street, but really lean into defining a site plan that has really great access. We've spent a lot of time of really looking at the traffic circulation, allowing for visitor parking, which as populations age, lots of visitors that come, but also there's some additional support that's needed. And so making sure that there's enough visitor parking for all of those different levels of use. And then beyond that, we do have secured resident parking that wraps the entire building and allows for a sufficient amount of parking for residents that do have cars. You'll notice that there's above and beyond parking spaces that are designed for accessibility. They're sprinkled throughout the site, making sure that the residents have enough access to main entries across the site. So the U-shaped parking circulation makes it very efficient, very effective, allows for really easy pedestrian access to the building for residents behind those secured gates. The building itself is an E-shaped building. And what this allows for is allowing to really give the frontage along Central Avenue that is not only required, but is a really great urban gesture to lean into the pedestrian experience along Central. The E-shaped itself then allows to carve out a very private courtyard space that residents get a little relief from the very urban Central Avenue and have space to develop their community on their own. You'll notice that there are a few features that are that do have frontage outside of the secured gate to really engage that public population. And so leasing office and commercial space certainly need a public frontage, but having some of the eyes on and interaction with the general public with a multi-purpose room. It has an adjacent plaza, which there's been a lot of great discussion about all the programming opportunities that could be there. Has access beyond the secured gate, but also has access behind a separate gate so that it could be opened up if need be. So thinking about some of the other site amenities that you see on the screen here, that community room forms that center of the E. In the center of the E and the community room itself, we're planning for a double height space, bigger than the one at Luminaria, which has been such a great success, with outdoor space directly outside. So some of that programmatic opportunity could spill out indoor, outdoor. There'll be a small kitchenette in there, lots of planting, some diverse outdoor amenities, thinking about orchards, just like at Luminaria, there's actually a handful of fruit-bearing trees to make sure that you have that seasonal dynamic quality within outdoor space. But then you also have a balance of a quieter Zen garden that has more development to come, but ultimately allows for residents and visitors to have all of the outdoor needs that they require, as us humans do. And then if you look along the north side of the property, really want to point out some key zoning requirements that are constraints. So there is a 100-foot neighborhood edge requirement. And so you'll see marching across your screen there, our 4-story building stays well within that. And then along the northernmost side, you can see right where the cursor is, where it just walked across the screen, is the landscape edge buffer. And so we've really leaned into that edge buffer and really want to make sure that the neighbors that are just to our north have pleasant landscape elements that are also usable by residents that provide that green space as the landscape edge buffer is intended to do. And so along that upper area, you'll start to see a looping walking path. Mission certainly of Greater Albuquerque Housing Partnership is really to create really interactive spaces. So to meet all body types, all abilities, but allow for safe space for residents to get out and move their bodies. And so our looping path connects a dog park. There's an awful lot of residents that do indeed have cute furry friends like they do at Luminaria. So making sure that they have space for that, and then connecting them through their community as a smaller looping path, and then back, of course, to the building. I think we can go to the next slide. So this slide is showing the current scheme for building elevations. If you're familiar with Luminaria and some of the photos that were shown earlier, Luminaria has a very specific color palette, and we are echoing that, but then also creating a little bit of its own character. So you'll see some similar items that we're replicating from Luminaria to Farolito. One is, of course, the horizontal banding, really leaning in, as we did on Luminaria, into the nature of Route 66, the fully lit horizontal band with signage attached to it to really activate that Central Avenue area. We do have lots of opportunity currently for additional murals. The success of the murals at Luminaria, they're just beautiful. I actually have them behind me here because I love them so much. Celebrating local artists. And then certainly really leaning into the massing diversification, really trying to bring a human scale to a 4-story building by breaking up some of the color changes halfway through the elevation. The commercial space has an opportunity to project out a little bit so that there's a single level form along Central Avenue, but lots of great potential in this. And just to reiterate, we're very early in schematic design, but trying to create a gateway along Central Avenue, which our next slide starts to show. So you see Luminaria on the left to the south side of Central, and then Farolito on the right on the north side of Central. And so really leaning into the opportunity to create a gateway into this fantastic area of Central Avenue and giving it that character. So I think this last rendering shows that Central Avenue eye-level view in order to capture some of the qualities that are being explored. And with that, I think I will turn that back over to Jackie to go to the next segment.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. So this slide shows our proposed timeline, starting with the City of Albuquerque's request for proposal, which will be turned in, I think in January. I don't know if somebody can correct me on that. Additional funding applications will follow. We'll have to do some entitlement work, although if anyone is on the call is familiar with the development process, all of that is changing. So we have the zoning that we need, and Miriam just said yes, early January will be the when we turn in the proposal. But we have the zoning that we need. The site plan will not be going through the DRB process because the DRB is going away as of January 1. But we are going to be into a new process called site plan administrative, and that will go through the development facilitation team, the DFT, which is basically city staff will still review site plans, provide comments, ask for changes, and that will be all in conjunction with the building permit process. We will still have to notify neighborhood associations during that process, but there won't be a public hearing for the site plan approval. Once that is in place, or really simultaneously with that, the team will be working on design development and construction documents. That's also in 2023, and then construction will occur in 2024. I don't know if someone can comment about what quarter in 2024 we're aiming for, but presumably it would be probably, I don't know, maybe second. Oh, Miriam again, aiming for January of 2024 to start construction. So next slide, please. All right, so questions. And if anyone has questions, please raise their hand. You'll be called on, and one of the team members will try to answer your questions. So go ahead.
You are also welcome to put questions in the Q&A, and we can address them there as well. So I have a question from Jolene Ellerton. Jolene, yes. I'm unmuting you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm a member of the town park community, which is immediately to the north there of this development. And speaking personally, I'm really excited about the thought of the development. But I had a couple questions. One was parking lot lighting and how that will affect the town park, the residents that are on LaGrange Avenue, right there next to your site. I'm thinking with the landscaping and stuff, it won't be an issue. And then I was also wondering, are you going to have walls on the west and the east side, or are you going to do fencing, or what are you going to do?
I can take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Jolene. I'm glad to hear you're excited about this. So I think first and foremost, the lighting on the site, it's a careful balance. So we have to meet night sky requirements in the state of New Mexico. And certainly the city of Albuquerque does have some specifics as well. And so really with photometric studies, we really have to be very careful of not allowing our lighting plans to spill out onto other properties. And so they will be pointed down, certainly to try to reserve the views of the stars, but also to really preserve light spilling onto your property as well. And so the trees and vegetation, to your really good point, will help as well, but ultimately the design intention will be to stay on our property. The next question that you had about walls versus fences on the east and west, we've explored both, and I don't think we have a concrete decision. I think that we've talked about opacity versus transparency. We are allowed to have both on both sides. Wondering if Felipe and Miriam or Kelly want to weigh in on that with any more specifics.
I think it's I think it's still very early in the process, and we just need to kind of weigh out and see what's working well at Illuminati and what would work well for the best. But I honestly couldn't say I have an opinion this evening on we're definitely going one way or the other.
All right. Anyone else have a question for the team? Any burning zoning questions?
So Miriam just put in the chat a really critical portion, and Jolene would love to hear more if you do have a preference of, transparency versus opacity, fence versus wall, as we consider this moving forward. But Miriam mentioned one of the big requirements of this project is meeting CPTED, so crime prevention in the built environment. I did not say that acronym right, spelling it out, but I'll put it in the chat for everybody so they have it. But ultimately, it's a bunch of design strategies that are specifically geared towards crime prevention. And so whether or not you have a solid wall versus an area that you can see within, there's some careful balance there too, ultimately, of being able to have eyes on the site so that there aren't any dark corners that are hidden. And so that goes to the lighting item as well, is that we want to be able to see areas of the site, but we also want to create privacy. And so, and thank you to Kelly, crime prevention through environmental design. I was close. And so there's lots of great strategies there. And I would encourage anybody to look up that great program. There's really key critical things to educate us all.
Okay, looks like Phil has a question. Or had his hand up and now it's down. Okay. So can someone
Hello?
unmute? Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Okay, yeah. I live here in Town Park. What I'm concerned about is the north wall. People are still jumping over the wall as it is now. Will you guys be able to put some fencing up to stop that on the north side?
That's a very good question. I think Felipe, I think you may need to unmute. Yes, there we go.
The question I have back, Mr. Martinez, is how high is that wall currently? Because I know there's some limits within that, but in our site plan, we're trying to stop them even before. There's going to be a pedestrian gate and vehicular gate. And so from central, it'll be secured all the way through the front. And if you could, Kelly, please go back to the site plan. But I'm not sure. That's something that we're going to work towards. So on the,
Well, appreciate that.
yeah, the secured resident gate on the bottom left corner, kind of right where the green starts. Yep, there's a red dot coming there. And the long along the front of the site, the building will become the fence. And then as it goes back a bit to the secured resident parking there will be also a fence that only residents with a key card or clicker will be able to get through. With the idea is that there'll be some visitor parking up front, but to be able to get onto the site, or more importantly, to go through the site and get back into the neighborhood, you almost have to be a resident or really jumping the fence. And so I think that security from the east and west fence, the south protection, and the north wall are all going to be kind of examined. And I know we hit some limits on the corner of Luminatia, and we're able to get a variance because of just the way that the site is. It looks flat, but there was a little bit of elevation gain and loss on the site. And so we were able to put a 6 feet fence at the whatever the highest or lowest part, but then behind the fence, it actually was in well excess of 9 feet.
Well, that's
to be able
good.
to provide that protection. And we did work on a variance for that. And I think it was actually approved even without a variance. They understood what we were trying to do. And the idea is we'll work with the site grading to make sure and make it as kind of secure as possible, for not only for the residents to prevent people from cutting through our site to get through the neighborhood, but also to secure our residents, which will be an elderly population, and we want to protect them and their visitors and their coming and goings also. So that's something that I think we'll continue to research, but we don't have a definite plan today, but we'll keep you apprised, because I think if I'm not mistaken, the last conversation we had where you're one of the ones that's acutely impacted by this site.
There's a bunch of us, right?
Yes, sir.
Another thing too is I've seen that you guys are growing some trees there along the north wall there. The state land office had a lot of trees there at one time. They were detrimental to a lot of my neighbors because the branches were going into the yard, going through the roof, much less the leaves. So that's something to keep in count. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I get those calls. We're pretty conscious about trimming them back to the property line when we do those kind of mainly. And we've not selected also the plants. I know there's a whole laundry list of plants, but that's something else to consider, is that not only the root growth, but the tree canopy growth, to make sure that we're not impacting our neighbors. So I think it'll be also design, but it'll also be maintenance. And literally those calls come back to me. So I get calls from our neighbors at other properties, and I just call the property and make sure it's added to our landscaping maintenance plan. So we make sure we don't have issues. We're trying to be good neighbors.
That's great. And I like your plan here. It's nice, guys.
Felipe, I was going to add too that, one thing that we could look at as a team is maybe having evergreen trees against that edge. So, they won't drop leaves, obviously, and then maybe the deciduous, further into the site. That would be one way to address that issue.
That's a good point, Jackie. And I just wanted to speak to the landscape buffer requirement is kind of nice. It does require having trees every 15 feet. And so I think, Jackie, it's a really good point of figuring out the ones that actually reduce the level of maintenance, but allow for that beautification that's really intended. That buffer from the light, like we talked about earlier, but technically there's a little bit of sound, buffering if needed. There's some really great qualities, but balancing the type so that they don't become a maintenance issue.
All right, looks like Jolene has another question or comment.
Yes, I was just curious about, you have your commercial space. Do you have any type of, what type of commercial space that would be? Or is that just for the residents within your your development?
Ms. Ellington, that's a great question. So what we're envisioning there is potentially working with another nonprofit or other. It's going to be more, I'd say it's going to be more kind of like office space. We're envisioning folks coming there to receive services potentially, or something like that. I'll use the example of one of our sister properties, not Farolito, but not Luminaria, but Highland Plaza. And we were partnering with the deaf community, and we developed a commercial space for them to have the Deaf Culture Center of New Mexico. And so they're going to use it for youth programming, adult programming, potlucks, classroom education, with most of those uses primarily being kind of between the 8 and 5 hours, with maybe some evening activities for the community. And that whole development was designed for the deaf community. This one could potentially be some type of, because it is a senior, it's going to be targeted towards seniors, likely 55 plus, perhaps 62 and over only, potentially someone that serves the senior population. It's the entire commercial space is about 2,000 square foot that we're arguing. So it's not going to be a big realm, and the visitor parking outside of the secure gate would be sufficient to kind of support that. We're not envisioning retail or anything of that nature. Definitely not something like our neighbor directly to the east of us. They've already got, I guess, that corner realm, but it's going to be more office, and will feel like it's just part of the development. It won't feel standalone commercial. That's at least our envisioning, and that's how we're designing the space. You'll notice if you kind of knew how to see site plans, it kind of looks a little bit like some bathrooms in the upper left corner of it, with it opening into the shared lobby that's going to be used by the leasing office, kind of where that entry lobby is. You'll see some doors. So the idea is that's how folks would enter the space. So it'll feel very much like they're just coming to visit the property, is how we've envisioned it to date. And since we are under the integrated development ordinance, there's some very specific uses that we can or can't utilize in that space, and we'll adhere to that. We're not looking for any variances or deviations from what the IDO would allow. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I mean, this is pretty exciting, the thought of developing this area. And there's a lot of potential for Central Avenue. I mean, your infrastructure is there, including mass transportation and stuff. It'd be really nice to see this, and then maybe some other development continue, especially right to the west of your site.
Mhm.
That's quite an eyesore, but it'll get there maybe step by step.
We're excited for it too. When we started work on Luminaria, that took a leap of faith. Farolito, we had a plan to do kind of a second phase. I'd like you to take a look at some of our other properties, and in some of our neighborhoods, we were kind of some of the first in things, some of the first in items, kind of redeveloping some other parts of Albuquerque, and have seen a lot of growth of around where we place some of our properties, specifically on kind of 4th and Mountain. There's been a lot of development there. And so we've been kind of really excited to see kind of that catalyst project help redevelop and redefine that neighborhood. And so we're very excited about this one too. And the team we've developed, we've got some lessons learned from across the street, but they also, both Jackie and her team, Hannah and her team, and our own staff here at GAP, we see a lot of different projects and are really excited to get even better with each time.
Right. And any other questions for the team? All right. Doesn't look like anyone has their hands up. So I just, on behalf of the whole team, thank you for attending. Feel free to contact us. You can see GAP's website address on the bottom of the slide and their phone number, which is 505-244-1614. Please feel free to ask questions. We're very excited about this project. It sounds like the neighborhood will welcome it, which is great. And hopefully we'll see that construction start in 2024. So thank you again and have a good evening.